I told you Heath sent a message to us for the Late Kick Extra podcast that I just decided to turn into a full segment on the Sunday night show. And he sent a question in the form of kind of coaches under pressure. And his exact wording was, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much pressure do you think these head coaches are feeling going into the season? And he gave James Franklin, Ed Orgeron, Harbaugh, Clay Helton, Kirby Smart. And there are obviously varying degrees of pressure here, but before we dive in, so I'm going to give an answer to every one of them, I want to make sure we understand there is a big difference in what I would call competitive pressure versus actual job security pressure. There are some guys here whose jobs are not on the line that could be facing some legitimate competitive pressure. In other words, you look at them and you say, well, I'm not going to advocate for your firing after this year, but you really need to get this done or that done. So let's just circle the block here. James Franklin, I don't feel a whole lot of pressure with him. Locally, I know there is some uneasiness that obviously comes from a bad year last year, but I think there's also some confidence around the Penn State fan base for anybody who's watched this program, Penn State fan or not. If you've watched the program, you've seen the trajectory they were on, and it was very solid, it was very positive, and then all of a sudden last year happens. So there is, I think, a willingness amongst a lot of Penn State fans and me, an outsider, to think or maybe believe and buy into the notion of 2020 being a one-off. A lot of programs out there trying to buy into that. Penn State's one of them. Well, here's the thing about 2021. This can change quickly. As much as I say I don't feel the pressure right now, this is not Major League Baseball. They don't play 162 games where you sit there and say, oh, we got to, we're only 7-13 over the last 20, but we'll get it right. You don't get to do that in college football. So this could change quick because they open up and they have at Wisconsin, Auburn, Indiana, and at Iowa, all in the first month and a half before their bye. And those are all going to be very losable games. They'll be favored in a couple. They'll be an underdog in a couple. But those are all very losable games. And Mike Yurcich, that new offensive coordinator hire up there, let's say he does pan out. Maybe they win all of them. Let's say it's a very mixed result like it was with Kurt Schiraka last year. Well, I'm just wanting, if I'm a Penn State fan, I want to make that game against Ohio State mean something in the context of the Big Ten championship race. That's what I'm looking for. So I don't think there's a lot of pressure entering the season, but boy, it could change quickly if you lose, let's say, 3 of those 4 games I mentioned. Yeah, it could change quickly. Ed Orgeron, I think there's a lot of pressure on him. But there's also a different element in the room, too, and that's a top 5 roster in college football. So there is pressure on him, but it's a little bit hidden right now. You're not going to see it a whole lot between now and week 1 because the fan base, understandably so, is willing to buy in. They're willing to buy into having 2 really good options at quarterback. They're willing to buy into a loaded roster, as I said. I mean, they have not taken a back seat to hardly anyone on the recruiting trail. They, being LSU fans, look, if you're an LSU fan and you look at your schedule, I could easily see you saying, there's no reason we couldn't be 8-0. Heading into the bye week before Alabama. There's no reason we couldn't be 8-0. Yeah, we're going to UCLA. Vegas says we're only favored by 3. Well, I believe we're a lot better. I mean, we're going to play at Mississippi State. We're going to have Auburn in here. We're going to play Florida. But all those are going to be short point spreads. We should be favored. We think we should win because we think everything's going to coalesce this year. We think the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator hires are going to pan out. We think the locker room synergy is going to be back, which we lacked woefully last year. And if all that comes together, you're going to have to excuse an LSU fan if they think, if all that's in place, we should murder everyone on our way to play Alabama. And listen, I'm not going to go as far as to argue with them. The question marks are that, well, those are question marks. Those are the question marks. A question mark, 9 times out of 10, it's a question mark. I want you to remember that. And so I think there is pressure on Ed Orgeron, but they are looking for it to be totally invalidated. But the same people, if they were to have a start to a season like they did last year, those same people, because they're so passionate about that LSU program, they'd be the first ones with the megaphone in front of their mouth. I don't blame them. I'm not making fun of anyone down there. I actually understand that line of thinking quite well. How about up at Michigan with Jim Harbaugh? Yes, a lot of pressure here. The whole staff knows it. This is one where I don't think there's a lot of gray area. Everyone kind of understands what the deal is. It's the talk of the Big Ten right now. What's going to happen with the Michigan staff this year? Because they did not get an overwhelming vote of confidence, but they got an extension. The plank is a little bit longer, and so they get to walk a little bit further out on it again this year. I'm not sure that that's the way that this is going to work for them. What they hope is the other side of that plank is, on solid ground over here, and so we can just walk right over it. At least they're not sitting still, okay? At least they're not up there waiting for the inevitable. They've been active in the transfer portal. We just talked about them picking up another receiver on our previous show. And so they should have as good an explosiveness at the receiver position as they've had since Harbaugh's been there. It's something they've lacked. When Josh Gaddis is named offensive coordinator, it only means what his talent will allow it to mean. And so I know you read a lot of these preview magazines and these anonymous coaches saying, they hadn't really done a whole lot up there. I don't know who's calling the shots offensively. Well, they don't have the talent to call what they want offensively. Maybe they have that now. They got early games against Washington, against Wisconsin on the road. We'll know because, if they lose those two games, I don't know that there's going to be anything short of a massive upset of Ohio State at the end of the year. I don't know that at that point there's going to be a lot to change the minds of Michigan fans. How about Clay Helton at USC? This is as close to 10, I think, as the pressure cooker gets. I think it's a clear yes. If you ask the fan base, it's a clear yes, but the word clear is the optimal word here. They want clarity. They don't want 8-4. They either want to be 10-2, 11-1, be in the playoff mix in the Pac-12 championship picture, or they just want to torch the barn, kill the rat, start this whole thing over. And the funny thing about it is, with the lingering questions at Arizona State, a program that many, including myself, thought would be their biggest challenger this year, is it just me, or are things setting up out there for Clay Helton and his staff to buy themselves another year? And you talk to some Southern Cal fans and talk to 10 of them, you'll get very mixed reaction on suggesting that. It's kind of counterintuitive. A lot of sports fans wouldn't understand that. But a USC fan looks and they say, we're good, and that's it. And we should be a lot better than good. Kirby Smart, last question here. I think there's competitive pressure on Kirby Smart. In no shape, form, or fashion will you sell me on the idea that there is job security pressure on him. And if you do try and sell me on it, I'd say, do you believe in championship or bust? Because you've probably been saying something like that. And so you'll probably say yes. And I'll ask, okay, what if he goes 9-3? 9-3 would be worst case for Georgia this year. Kirby Smart goes 9-3. What's happening to him? You tell me he's getting fired? Kirby Smart's not getting fired if he goes 9-3. That's not happening. So this is competitive pressure, because if he goes 9-3, everyone would be dunking on him. His own staff internally, they would be crushed if they went 9-3. They're not getting fired if he goes 9-3. That's why I haven't said the terms or the phrase, I guess, championship or bust, because I don't believe that's the situation they're in. Rarely is anyone ever in that situation. But I think there's a healthy amount of competitive pressure there, as there should be, and as a result, I don't have a problem with that. But job security pressure, no, I don't think there is that for Kirby Smart.